The boardroom smelled like tension and stale coffee. I'd been in that room more times than I could count, but today it felt different, like the walls themselves knew we were circling the drain. It was January 2009, and the world was on fire. Recessions don't ask politely. They kick the door in and take everything. Our company, once the darling of Wall Street, was barely breathing. Payroll was a gamble. Vendors were restless. I hadn't slept properly in 6 weeks. I sat at the far end of the long lacquered table. My suit was rumpled. I didn't care. I'd just pulled off a miracle. Closed a deal with Stratostech, a global logistics firm with enough capital to keep us afloat for at least another year. It hadn't been pretty. Red-eye flights, relentless calls, ego-massaging negotiations. But I did it. I saved the company, single-handedly. The CEO, Carter Langston, cleared his throat and smiled like he was reading a weather report. Thanks to our strategy team, we're officially out of immediate danger. Strategy team? That was rich. There was no strategy team. Just me and a battered BlackBerry. Next to him sat his daughter, Sloan Langston, newly appointed Chief Strategy Officer, because nepotism is trend-proof. She was barefoot in the boardroom, sipping a matcha latte out of a biodegradable cup, like she was still in Bali. Flip-flops. A linen shirt tied in a careless knot at her waist. She looked like she'd wandered into the wrong building and decided to stay. Sloan smiled at me like I was a middle manager who'd spilled coffee on her desk. "Before we wrap," she said, "I just want to acknowledge David for his hard work." A few heads turned. My name echoed in the silence like a loose screw in a jet engine. She continued, "That said, we're moving in a new direction, one more in line with emerging consumer mindsets and trend dynamics." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She tilted her head, mock sincere. "You're just not trend-focused." I thought she was joking. I waited for the punchline. None came. I glanced at Carter. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The man who'd mentored me for 8 years, who once called me the future of the company, now looked like he'd rather vanish into his ergonomic chair. I stood up slowly. No words, no grand speech. Just reached into my briefcase and pulled out the master client list, my masterpiece. 17 years of trust, hustle, and after-hours handshakes. I placed it gently on the table. "Good luck," I said, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't take the elevator right away. I just stood in the hallway, the sterile carpet swallowing the sound of my breathing. My hands shook, not with rage, but with something colder. Disbelief. How did we get here? When I joined Langston and Keene, I was 26, hungry, and willing to eat glass if it got me one rung higher. My first office was a converted supply closet with a view of the alley. I didn't care. I believed in what we were building. We were lean, hungry, and loud. The company had backbone then. No kombucha in the fridge, no Slack channels about chakras, just blood, sweat, and Excel. But things changed. Carter went soft. We IPO'd and hired consultants who wore designer glasses and said things like synergy stack. We stopped innovating and started branding. By the time Sloan showed up with her yoga mat and vision board, we were already sinking. Still, I stayed. Because loyalty matters. Because you don't abandon a ship just because the captain starts journaling. I took the elevator down. Each floor ticked by like a countdown to irrelevance. Ding, 15, 14. In my mind, I replayed that boardroom moment. Her voice, that stupid latte. Not trend-focused. I was the only one still doing actual work. The only one chasing real deals while the rest of them played musical chairs with titles and hashtags. Ding, 10, 9. But here I was, discarded, like a crumpled press release. I reached the lobby and stepped outside into the winter air. No box of office things, no applause, just the bitter wind slicing through my coat. I walked without knowing where I was going. Maybe to the diner on 3rd, where I used to meet clients back before we had a juice bar on the 5th floor. Maybe nowhere. I knew one thing. I was done chasing approval from people who thought brand narrative was more important than revenue. I'd saved them, and they'd tossed me like yesterday's memo. But something strange flickered under the betrayal. Relief. It was over. The meetings, the late nights, the thankless loyalty. Gone. I was free. Angry, sure, but free. I stopped on the sidewalk and looked back at the glass tower. My reflection stared at me, tie crooked, eyes sunken, jaw tight. Good. I turned away and kept walking. Let it burn. 3 days after I walked out of that boardroom, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I let it ring. I wasn't in the mood for sympathy, apologies, or LinkedIn messages from people pretending to be shocked by my exit. My apartment was small, boxy, and loud. Radiator hissed like it held a grudge. The ceiling fan had 2 speeds, helicopter or dead. But it was mine, and for the first time in years, I could hear myself think. I was halfway through a lukewarm beer and some regrettable Chinese leftovers when my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I almost let it ring, but something made me pick up. David. The voice was hushed. Legal department. Andrea. We'd worked a few crisis cases together. Sharp, fast, didn't care for buzzwords. What? I said, flat. The board's in chaos, she said. I sat up. Come again? They didn't expect the fallout. You were the linchpin. Clients are bailing left and right. Contracts are getting walked. Sloan's trying to spin it, but no one's buying the kombucha. I laughed, short and bitter. Should have held on to that client list. They're saying you sabotaged the transition, she said, like she didn't quite believe it. Leaked something. Did I? Did you? Number. But maybe I should have. Andrea exhaled. They're scrambling. Someone floated reinstating your deal as a consultant. Whispered, off the books. Fat check, no headlines. They think I'll fix what they broke without even offering a real apology. You want my advice? No. Didn't think so. She hung up. I tossed the phone onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. The bitterness was still there, heavy as concrete, but underneath it, something else. Power. They thought I was disposable, replaceable, just another suited cog. And now, 3 days without me, the machine was seizing up. By the end of the week, the leaks started. First, a leaked internal email from Sloan about repositioning brand values to align with festival culture. That one made the rounds on Twitter with the caption, "Is this a parody?" Then came the client exits. Stratotech pulled out first. I wasn't surprised. That deal had been a handshake, not a spreadsheet. Then 2 more followed, smaller but vocal. One issued a statement blaming incoherent strategic vision. Corporate speak for. We don't trust the barefoot lady in the C-suite. I watched it all unfold from my laptop in sweatpants. Ate cereal out of a mixing bowl. Scrolled through headlines like a retired general watching a war he once fought. But I wasn't celebrating. Not really. Because I remembered what it took to build all that. Years of missed birthdays, red eyes to Omaha, hand-holding fragile egos, swallowing pride. It was more than just business. It had been my life. And now, it was falling apart. Not because it had to, but because it was handed to someone who didn't know what to do with it. A week after my departure, I got the call. Blocked number. I answered. David, a voice said, smooth and surgical. Mark Willis, board member, always wore a tie even on Zoom. I'll cut to it. We'd like to retain you in an advisory capacity. No. You haven't heard the offer. I don't need to. We're prepared to be generous. You think I left because of money? A pause. Then what do you want? Respect, I said. But it's a little late for that, isn't it? Another pause. David, don't make this emotional. Click. I stared at the wall for a long time after that. Not angry, just empty. There's a strange freedom in realizing they never cared. Not really. As long as you hit the numbers, you were useful. The moment you spoke out of turn, or dressed wrong, or didn't drink the kale Kool-Aid, you were an antique. I walked over to the bookshelf, pulled down a dusty photo frame. My dad. Hard hat, cigarette, steel mill behind him, hands like bricks. He worked 30 years without ever needing a slide deck to prove his worth. When he got laid off, he didn't complain. He built fences for neighbors, fixed tractors, said, if they won't give you a job, make one. I'd forgotten that. Somewhere between the IPO parties and the airport lounges, I forgot where I came from. Now it came back, clear as the cold wind outside. I set the photo down on the table. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fit into someone else's broken system. Maybe it was time to build something of my own. The garage smelled like motor oil and ambition. We had 2 folding tables, 3 laptops, and 1 space heater that made more noise than heat. It was nothing like the corner office I used to have, but it didn't matter. This time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was building something real. James and Leo sat across from me, both looking like they hadn't slept. We hadn't. James used to run sales at Langston & Keene before he got pushed aside for a younger, louder version of himself. Leo was IT, quiet genius, eyes always on a screen, never on people. We all had chips on our shoulders. Stratotech confirmed, James said, typing furiously. They're in. 6-month retainer to start. That was the first domino. I smiled. 1 down. We didn't have a name yet. We didn't need one. Clients weren't signing with us because of logos or slogans. They were signing because of me. Because they trusted what I'd built before the board handed it over to Sloan and her flip-flop vision quest. I'd sunk nearly all my savings into this. No salary, no benefits, just risk and belief. My war chest wasn't made of venture capital or angel investors. It was built on grit, reputation, and the quiet fury of being underestimated. Every day we worked the phones. I called old contacts, chased leads, pitched like my life depended on it. Because it did. And the thing was, people picked up. They remembered how I showed up when it mattered. They remembered how I fought for their business. Within a month, 5 clients had signed. 2 of them were high profile enough to make waves. I knew Sloan would notice. She didn't disappoint. The PR campaign started with a glossy puff piece in Modern Market Weekly, calling her a visionary unafraid to shed outdated thinking. The article name-dropped me without using my name. Legacy-minded leadership that no longer aligns with company values. Then came the hit jobs. Anonymous sources described me as a relic of aggressive deal-making, an obstacle to innovation, and my personal favorite, the embodiment of toxic masculinity in a suit. I laughed when I read that one. James nearly punched a wall. She's trying to paint you as a villain, he said. Let her, I replied. Villains get things done. The best part. The clients didn't buy it. They knew me. They knew the work. Sloan had branding. I had results. We fought smart. No billboards, no flashy ads. Just a whisper campaign of our own, 1 phone call at a time. We weren't stealing clients. We were giving them an exit. At night, I'd collapse on the futon in the garage, my neck stiff, my hands tingling from typing too much. But I'd feel something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. No board meetings, no forced team building, no pretending. I was building something for me. For the first time in my career, I didn't need a title. I didn't need permission. Around week 5, she called. Not Sloan. Her, Emily. We hadn't spoken in years. She was the one that got away. Because I pushed her. I'd chosen the company over her. I answered the phone expecting small talk. What I got was a mirror. I saw the article, she said. Is it true? Which part? That you're out for blood. I hesitated. I'm building something. They made it personal first. She was quiet. Then, at what point does justice become vanity? That one hit harder than I expected. I told her I was doing this to prove I still had value, that I wasn't what they said I was, that I could build something better. She didn't argue. She just listened. We made plans to meet for coffee. The next day, we signed our 10th client, a major one, enough to hire 2 full-time staff and move out of the garage. But I stayed 1 more week. I needed to, because something had shifted. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing clarity. That's when the invitation came, from ArcLight Capital, a VC firm that once laughed me out of their glass-walled office 5 years ago for being too conservative in scope. Now they wanted a meeting. I showed up in the same suit they mocked back then. No deck, no nonsense. The same guy who once scrolled through his phone while I pitched leaned forward this time, elbows on the table. I've been following what you're building, he said. It's impressive. I just smiled. This wasn't luck. This wasn't timing. This was the war chest. And I wasn't done. It started with a leak, a single spreadsheet. One earnings report slipped into the bloodstream of the internet like poison. I was at the office, our office now, 3 floors up from the garage, all glass and raw concrete, when Leo spun his monitor toward me. Langston and Keen's Q, 2 numbers just dropped, he said. It's bad. I skimmed it once, then twice. Revenue down 42%. Operating losses doubled. 4 major clients gone. 2 of them had been ours once. My deals. A whisper spread across the market like a crack in the ice. The stock started to tank before the close of day. I watched in silence as the price ticked down. 27, then 21, then 15. By morning, it hit the headlines. Langston and Keen posts, devastating losses, board calls, emergency meeting. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. Watching something you built collapse is never satisfying, even when someone else is at the wheel. But I did feel something else. Closure. The next day, my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail, then again, and again. Until finally I picked up, expecting more damage control spin. It was Mark Willis again. Voice tight, practiced. We want to meet. You said that last time. This is different. They flew me in first class. That was their first mistake. The second was thinking I'd be impressed. The Langston and Keen Tower had aged like a ghost story. What once looked sleek now looked sterile. I walked the halls in silence, passing framed posters of campaigns I'd helped create. Now they felt like relics. The boardroom was packed. Same table, same water pitchers, just fewer smiles. We were wrong, Mark said. No preamble, just those 3 words. I looked around. Sloan wasn't there. Carter sat at the end, silent, smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched like a man already halfway out the door. You built this company, Mark continued. We didn't see it then. We do now. Someone slid a folder across the table. Inside, an offer. CEO, full control, restructure authority, equity, of course. You want me to clean up her mess, I said. We want you to save the company. The room waited, watched. I said nothing. I asked to walk the building, alone. No one stopped me. I passed the sales floor, half empty, marketing, ghost town. I stood outside the office that used to be mine. The nameplate was gone, the door ajar. Inside, it was stripped bare. No photos, no notes, just a chair and a desk. I sat down, just to see how it felt. Nothing. No spark, no heat. I wasn't home. I found Sloane upstairs, alone in her new glass office. She was staring at her phone, scrolling through the headlines. When she saw me, she didn't stand. "You're early," she said. "I'm not staying," I replied. She leaned back, still composed, still smug, but her voice trembled when she spoke. I didn't expect it to fall this fast. "No one does." She looked at me then, really looked. "You want me to say it?" "No." "You were better than me. You always were." Silence. "I fired you because you scared me," she said finally. "You made me feel like I didn't belong, like I wasn't needed." "You weren't," I said, calm. She laughed once, dry. "I thought you'd gloat." "I don't need to." She didn't apologize, and I didn't ask her to. Some people mistake shame for growth. They're not the same. "I came to say no," I told her. "They want me back. CEO. The whole deal." Her expression didn't change. Maybe she already knew. "So?" she asked. I stood, straightened my coat. "I'm not here to fix your mess," I said. "I'm here to bury it." I walked out, past the offices, the dead-eyed interns, the silent elevator, past the brand pillars and motivational posters peeling at the corners. No applause, no fanfare. But this time, I wasn't being pushed. I was walking out by choice. Back on the street, the wind hit my face like a slap. It felt good. The world hadn't changed. The city was still loud, impatient. But I wasn't the guy they fired anymore. I wasn't chasing approval, titles, legacy. I was building my own, and I wasn't done yet. 1 year later, I stood in front of a room full of MBA candidates in a crisp, clean lecture hall at Northridge Business School. Rows of hungry faces stared back at me, some eager, some skeptical, some already mapping out their LinkedIn connections. I'd been invited to speak on resilient leadership, which is just a fancy way of saying how to get punched in the mouth and not stay down. I looked at the crowd, adjusted the mic. "I was fired in flip-flops," I said. A few students laughed. Good. The CEO's daughter told me I wasn't trend-focused. I handed her the master client list and walked out. More laughter. A few gasps. One student muttered, "No way." I nodded. "Way." I paused. That day, I continued, felt like the worst moment of my life. I'd poured everything I had into that company. I thought I'd be buried in a suit with its logo stitched into the lining. But here's the thing. Sometimes getting pushed out is the best thing that can happen to you. Silence. A different kind now. The kind that listens. Our company today, Forge and Field, was built in a garage with a busted heater, 2 bitter ex-colleagues, and a jug of black coffee. We didn't have much, but we had clarity. And we had something they didn't. Grit. The kind of grit that doesn't trend on Twitter, but sticks when the deals get messy. A hand shot up. "How did you beat them?" I smiled. I didn't. I outgrew them. That answer sat with them a moment. Then the room erupted in quiet nods and frantic typing. Afterward, a few students came up to shake my hand, ask questions, offer business cards like little white flags. I answered what I could, but my mind had already wandered. I stepped out into the hall, loosened my collar, and checked the time. Emily would be waiting. Forge and Field was more than I'd imagined. Lean, ethical, profitable. We didn't try to be trendy. We didn't chase hashtags or hire culture consultants. We focused on doing the work. We solved real problems. We listened when clients spoke, and we made promises we actually intended to keep. The day we overtook Langston and Keene in market share, Leo popped champagne and nearly shorted out his laptop. James laughed until he cried. I just sat back and watched them celebrate. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Bitterness had burned off like morning fog. I hadn't won by taking them down. I'd won by walking away. Twice. I could have gone back. Could have taken their title, their paychecks, their burden. But I didn't. I'd stood in that boardroom and realized I didn't want to rescue a sinking ship just to be captain of the wreck. I wanted to build my own fleet. And I had. Clients trusted us not because we were the loudest, but because we were consistent. We didn't chase the future. We built it, one quiet deal at a time. And Emily? She came back. Not all at once. At first, it was coffee, then a long walk, then a call, just to say hi. Eventually, I stopped checking my email when we were together. She challenged me, not in the boardroom way, but in the way that makes you question what you really need to win. One night, after a long dinner with friends, she leaned over, smiled, and said, "You don't look like someone chasing ghosts anymore." She was right. I stepped through the door of our new office, a real one, not a garage, and heard the familiar buzz of voices. Team members gathered around a long oak table, laptops open, food containers half-eaten. Ideas flew, jokes interrupted, someone dropped a pen and cursed softly. It wasn't a company. It was a living thing. Emily waved from the far end of the room, holding a coffee and a grin. Leo gave me a nod from behind 3 monitors. James was mid-pitch on a call, gesturing with a fork in one hand. I took it in, the warmth, the mess, the movement. This wasn't just success. It was ours. I walked over to my desk. No plaques, no nameplate, no framed quote about leadership. Just a table, a laptop, and a photograph of my dad at his steel mill. Still watching, still proud. I sat down, exhaled, and smiled. They handed me my walking papers. I used them to draw a blueprint.